I just got back from dropping my husband off at the airport for an unexpected business trip, so that just completely puts a wrench in my dinner plans, my meal plans for the coming weeks, and I have some food on hand. I'm just gonna try not to go to the grocery store much for the next 2 weeks and just figure it out. So I wanna show you a couple of tips and tricks for making smaller meals and preserving some of the fresh food that we have on hand so it doesn't go bad. So the first thing I wanted to do was take care of all these fresh vegetables and make sure that they're not gonna go bad while I figure out what to do with them. So I'm just going to put all my bell peppers whole straight in the freezer in a reusable bag. It works great. You don't have to chop them or blanch them or anything, or even rinse them, because I'm going to rinse them later. So I just throw them straight in the freezer. So in case you didn't know, you can do that. I did take one of the bell peppers and chop it up, and the entire onion that I had on hand, I chopped it up as well because I can just get it out of the refrigerator for the next 5 days or so. I grabbed some tomatoes from my freezer, which I also just throw in completely whole, just like that. Again, I don't do anything to them. I grow them in my yard, so I tend to have a ton on hand, and I just throw them straight in the freezer. Then when I'm ready to use them, I just run them under some cool water. Then I'll just let them sit on the cutting board for about 10 to 15 minutes so they can thaw a bit before I try to chop them up. The first meal I decided to make was my quinoa bell pepper casserole. It's a one-pot dish. It's super easy. I'm just going to heat some oil in a small pot, add a little bit of onion and then some garlic, and of course just saute that until it's all soft and fragrant and all that jazz. Then I add my bell pepper and all those chopped tomatoes. If you don't have fresh tomatoes, you can use canned. It's a super easy, adaptable recipe. I definitely recommend trying this if you can. Then I had some black beans, about a half a cup, maybe a cup or so in the freezer, so I just threw those in. Of course, I thawed them first. A little salt and pepper, some cumin, a little bit more salt, then some Worcestershire. You can use anything that you like. Just remember that Worcestershire is not vegetarian, so you can use a vegan Worcestershire. I've heard. I haven't seen it yet, but I'd like to look for one because I want to pick one up eventually. Then I added some quinoa, which I normally do rice, but I have done quinoa in the past, so I just felt like doing something really well balanced with a lot of nutrients today, just to kick off the week on a good foot. Or the right foot, is that how you say it? I don't know. But I added a ton of spinach from my freezer. Again, this was fresh spinach that I bought, and I just threw it straight in the freezer. I don't blanch it. I just throw it right in. So I just added a nice big handful, then covered it up and just let that cook until the quinoa was nice and cooked through. Gave it a good stir. Of course, I tasted it to make sure that quinoa was cooked through completely. Then I added whatever cheese I had on hand. I believe it's mozzarella and cheddar here. Then I just put the lid back on for about 1 or 2 minutes until it's nice and melty. And then I just serve it up. And a lot of times I serve this with chips and some Greek yogurt, hot sauce. You could do avocado. It is really, really good. This is one of my all-time favorite recipes. I'll definitely put it down in the description for you. And that was about 2 portions. I had the rest the next day. And then for lunches, I did things like tuna salad. And for breakfast, I had some Greek yogurt on hand, a bunch of it. So I like to add this granola on top, or any granola really that I have on hand, and add a little drizzle of honey. And if I have any extra slivered almonds or some fresh blueberries or strawberries, bananas, things like that, I'll just do that. And then this night for dinner, which was a couple days later, I decided to use up the rest of my chicken thighs from the freezer and just make a pho. This is just one of my go-to dinners if I am feeling super lazy. It's very fast. I just add whatever raw or cooked chicken to a pot and cover it completely with water. Add some fish sauce, some sugar, onions, ginger, a little bit of salt, peppercorns, cinnamon, a little star anise, whatever kind of spices I have on hand for pho. Then I'm just going to bring that to a simmer and let it cook for about 45 minutes or until that chicken is cooked through. Then I'll take that out and shred it. And in the meantime, I'm also going to be starting my pho noodles. You can use ramen if you like. Whatever noodles that you have on hand is fine, but I definitely love a pho noodle for pho. Then I'm just going to strain that out, add it to a bowl with my shredded chicken. I like to do jalapenos, cilantro, lime, any kind of extra ingredients on it. But today, of course, I was just feeling extra tired. So we just went with what we had. And you can see the kids have their portion too. They love this soup. For mine, I like to add a little hoisin, some sriracha for spice. And then, of course, it makes a ton. So I had some for lunch and dinner the next day, which was really great. A couple days after the pho, I decided to make a few things with those ingredients I threw in the freezer. So I got a few of the red bell peppers out, well, a couple. Then I quartered them. And this is a great way, by the way, to quarter or slice a bell pepper. You just put it up on its end and then just cut
around the seeds. It makes it super fast and easy. I learned that from Gordon Ramsay. And then I'm just putting some whole garlic cloves unpeeled on a sheet tray. I'm going to go ahead and make some roasted red pepper and tomato soup to go with some grilled cheese tonight. So I'm getting kind of fancy here. I'm going to put some oil, just avocado oil, salt and pepper, and then just put that in the oven at 375 for about 30 to 45 minutes. Again, I'm using those tomatoes from my freezer finally, which I thought I was going to make more tomato sauce this year, but it ended up being more soups and casseroles, which is great. So again, I just rinse those under water and then let them thaw for about 10 to 15 minutes, just until they are soft enough to chop. Then I'll just roughly chop them because these are just going to end up getting cooked down. So it's really not a big deal how they're chopped. I don't mind the skins. If you want to peel them off, you can. And I'm using the pho broth that I had left over because it made a ton. I'm just going to utilize that here in this soup so nothing goes to waste. Then I'm just going to pull some of those diced onions out of the refrigerator that I diced the very first day. If you're not going to use diced onions within 5 days, I recommend freezing them. You could just pull them out of the freezer and throw them in your cooking just like that too. Now I'm adding a little bit of tomato paste and I'm going to saute that until it gets a little bit more golden and intensifies the flavor. Then I'll add all of my chopped tomatoes and give that a nice stir and just let that cook and reduce down a bit before I add any more ingredients. And in the meantime, I'm going to take care of the rest of that tomato paste, which was a can. I believe it was a 6-ounce can. I'm just going to put it in a Ziploc baggie here, flatten it the best that I can, and then put some lines in it with the back of a knife. You can use a spoon or whatever you have on hand. Your fingers are fine. And just make even lines so the portions are about even. It's going to be around a tablespoon and a half per portion here, the way I did it. And I'm just going to put it in the freezer just like that. And when it comes time to use it, it'll be really easy to just snap off a portion for my cooking. So after those tomatoes have reduced down a little bit, then I'll start adding some seasonings. This time I just added some salt, pepper, and dried basil, but you can add any Italian seasonings that you like or anything that you love. Then I added some of that pho broth. And in the meantime, I'm going to go check on my roasted red peppers and garlic. They look a little bit charred, which is great. That's just what we want. So I'm going to pull that out of the oven, let them cool for a few minutes, and then I'm going to take some of the skins off, as you can see here, just because I don't love having a lot of skins in my tomato soup, but a few of them are fine. But you can leave the skins on if you like. It's up to you. Then peel the garlic and throw that in there as well. Then I'll stir that on up and bring it to a simmer again, reduce the heat. Then I'll cover it and just let that go for about 30 minutes or so. And this is just to really intensify the flavor and get some of the smokiness from the roasted red bell peppers and the garlic in there. It really adds a ton of flavor just letting it simmer a bit. Then I'm going to let that cool for a few minutes off of the stove. And then I'm using my hand blender here. If you don't have a hand blender, you can use a regular blender, but be careful because it's hot liquid. So if you're going to do that, just make sure you don't have the lid on super tightly and you don't overfill it, and maybe cover it with a towel so you don't splash yourself. Once it's all nice and blended, you can see how delicious it looks. You can add some heavy cream if you want, but I don't really prefer heavy cream, but you can if you like. If you'd like a nice creamy tomato soup, it's really delicious. Then I saw this viral grilled cheese sandwich and I had to try it. It uses Grana Padano or Parmesan Reggiano, like a Parmesan that's finely grated. I just put some softened butter on the one side of bread and just dipped it in that cheese. Oh my goodness, you can already tell this is going to be amazing. You can just see all that cheese. I'm kind of obsessed with cheese. It's entirely coating that side of bread and I am so excited about this. I just put it in my nonstick pan. I didn't want to test this out in my stainless steel. I didn't know if it was going to stick or what it was going to do with the cheese like that. So I did try it in a nonstick. Just made it as is like I normally do, and look at how delicious. It was so crispy. You can hear it. It's amazing. And that was it for it. I just served it up with my roasted red pepper and tomato soup. Look how cheesy. It turned out really good. This was a really nice, delicious meal filled with veggies. You couldn't even tell though because it was in the soup and it was just so good. Next, I had some shrimp on hand, so I decided to make some baked breaded shrimp, and I am just not a huge fan of shrimp. It didn't turn out amazing. I should have just air fried it, but it was good. We had cucumber sandwiches with it too by request. And then for breakfast, of course, I love to have a nice big brunch on the weekend. Every weekend, that's just my thing. So I made a little portion of the Greek yogurt and granola for my kids with the honey on top, and made a large one for myself, some hash browns from the freezer, some toast, strawberries, bananas, and scrambled eggs. It was delicious. Then for snacks, we just had some hummus with some crackers and pretzels and cheese and some bell peppers. It's a great snack, super easy to put together. This next dinner idea is just a super easy one sheet pan meal. I'm just putting some practically frozen chicken thighs on the sheet tray with some bell peppers that I had already chopped previously on a different day, and just added some avocado oil, some seasonings, just some garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, and paprika. And then I'm just going to put that in the oven and cook it through for about maybe 30 to 40 minutes. My chicken was really frozen, so it took a little bit longer. Usually only takes like 25 minutes. But in any case, it turned out delicious. I decided to go ahead and serve this with just a can of baked beans. I just had a small one on hand that I had in my pantry for some reason, and it was just a super easy basic meal. And that's it for the meals on this particular week. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.